it's completely flipped in the last few years. So when I started really getting into this and pushing it as a service line within UHY, I was like, surely people will just jump on this. This is the right thing to do. It's like important. Like it's so important. The future of our children, it depends on us doing something about this now. And that didn't work. So now we've flipped the language. So we've really flipped what we're talking about. And we're almost like sneaking sustainability into conversations with people and not calling
stealth sustainability.
We can't call it sustainability. It's all about resilience.
And welcome back to The Responsible Edge, a podcast about how to win at business responsibly. I'm Charlie Martin, your host and founder of TrueMark, the mark of trusted sustainability reports and communications. And our article this week is titled, What the Booming Net Zero Sector Means for Accountants, published by the Institute of Chartered Accountants in 2025, which reports that the UK's net zero economy has grown 10.1% since 2023 to 83.1 billion in value. And it argues the accounting profession now has a growing role to play in verifying and reporting on that growth. And I'm absolutely thrilled to say that today I'm joined by my guest, Harriet Hodgson-Grove, an expert in audit and sustainability reporting. She's audit partner and national head of sustainable business services at UHY Hacker Young and a chartered accountant. Harriet, it's brilliant to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, well, first of all, thank you so much for arranging and organising for us to record on site. We've had the absolutely brilliant Natalia who's behind the camera at the moment, being a wizard this morning and setting ourselves up. So big thank you to Natalia too. Let's jump into the article straight off the bat. I was in danger reading this, beginning to feel quite optimistic about the prospects for the UK's net zero economy. There's always kind of a layer to look at beneath the headline, and perhaps even to think about the timing of the article, who wrote the article, etc., and the intent behind it. But when you first read this piece, what did you make of it?
Again, I was optimistic. It's a great piece and it's really interesting, sort of the timing of it. So that was released in October 2025, so a little bit of time ago now. But the CBI have just released their updated analysis in June 2026, and it's getting even better. So despite the sort of negative connotations and negative press around net zero in terms of the politicians and sort of saying where our focus should be, it's showing that this is a real growing economy like piece that is really important if we are going to achieve the growth that we want to, but also it will help us achieve those sort of net zero targets by 2050.
Fantastic to hear that things are getting even better. Can I push you on? You've got some notes there. Can I push you on some stats of how much better things are getting?
Definitely. So the 2026 update, as I said, which was released in June, said that the net zero economy now generates around £105 billion of gross value add compared to the 83.1 billion last year.
Yeah.
So that's really positive. It supports 1.1 million full-time jobs. So especially when there's so many issues with unemployment, this is such an incredible, sector that should be focused on because it's new jobs, it's new ideas, new technologies. So it's really building that, and it's leaning into AI, dare I say, as well. There's a lot of pieces that work like with AI to be able to help develop these new technologies, etc. So it is creating those jobs that didn't exist before and now are there for our young people who are leaving university and trying to find work.
It's awesome. It's awesome. And well, great to hear. I mean, I'd really be interested to break down or to look at sort of the speed of development and whether or not that is sort of sustaining itself or whether or not we've seen a spike since the November last year report. But fascinating, but great to hear that it's moving in the right direction anyway. But this is a bigger, broader question on this, but we both read this article and felt positive about it and thought to ourselves, wow, like there's a real opportunity for the UK to really lean in to the net zero economy. I just want to take you back to like a bigger, broader question around like the brand Britain and kind of what we as a collective economy, like what are we trying to achieve and what are we trying to do? Like obviously post Brexit, there's lots of conversation around we've now got this freedom and this opportunity to decide our own sort of direction and to build that kind of brand Britain, as I say. In your mind, is net zero and net zero sort of initiatives and opportunities, is that one of the best opportunities that we have for an area to lean into and almost become part of our national identity when it comes to our economy?
I definitely think so. Obviously, we're an island. We have a lot of opportunities in terms of developing sort of wind and solar, specifically wind, because obviously we're surrounded by water, and we can use that to our advantage. It makes sense for us to go in that route and to stand out and be ahead of the crowd and sort of really lean into our targets that we've set. So I definitely think that's a key part of Brand Britain.
I love that because, and I think even like thinking about the geography of the country, like, you know, the status that we have, the institutions that we have around research, around technology and innovation, etc. Like, it is almost the perfect mix to say this is an area that we could really be a lead on globally.
Yeah, totally. And one thing that the article pulls out as well is that where these jobs are being created. So they're being created in areas of the UK which haven't traditionally been thought of as growth areas. So areas like Scotland, North East, West Midlands, Yorkshire and the Humber regions. So it's really sort of sharing that, making it a just transition is another one of those words that we talk about in this space, but it's sharing that opportunity.
And I think when I read that bit, because I think that's really great that you've picked that out, we're sitting here recording, I think on the 15th of July, 2026. And obviously we've just had Andy Burnham talking about the number 10 in the North, I think. And, you know, this must be music to his ears when thinking about that kind of redistribution of wealth and activity economically to different parts of the UK. This all sounds brilliant. This all sounds great. I mean, I'm so totally over the line. It's fantastic to read. For those that are going to scrutinize this and go, okay, before we get into kind of what's not said in this article, let's look at who said this. So just talk us through the intent behind the creation of this article from a CBI perspective and from an Institute of Chartered Accountants point of view. Like, why was this piece produced when it was? What's the intent behind creating something like this?
So it's based on the research, obviously, that was done by the CBI, and it's written by Louise Hellam, who's the chief economist there. And the intent is to sort of make the net zero sector like a credible sector within, you know, the UK. And so like thinking about what the net zero sector actually means. So it's anything to do with reducing emissions and enabling the transition to a low carbon economy. So it's again thinking of the renewable energy sector, energy efficiencies, electric vehicles and batteries. So it's really just trying to sort of legitimize the growth opportunities for this sector. And the link to the ICAW, which is our regulator as accountants, is that accountants play a key role in that sort of the growth of that sector. We have hundreds, thousands, millions of clients who are in the SME world who are all contributing to the sort of, or should be contributing to this journey to net zero. And we have a real opportunity and a responsibility to be talking to our clients about how they can support this transition and how they can have resilient businesses that are sustainable in the long term. And I want to
come on to like sort of nerdle into that. Nerdle, definitely not the right term, but go into that a little bit more, and especially with the work that you guys are doing at Hacker Young. But before I do, the article was published, wasn't it, just before the autumn budget, I believe, last year. And there was a bit of a call to arms, wasn't there, in the article around where investment is needed in order to support the continual growth and development of the net zero economy in the UK. Can you just touch on what those kind of key call to arms were? And perhaps just, and again, I'm putting this on you now, but perhaps just relate to sort of how well or otherwise you think we're doing in investing in those areas and how that might have affected those recent results that you alluded to before.
Yeah, definitely. So there's sort of the three areas where there's potential for future growth that would focus on that. In that article were the sort of clean power systems. So looking at like floating wind turbines and small modular reactors, industrial decarbonisation. So thinking about carbon capture and utilisation and storage clusters. And then the green digital economy, which looks at like software innovations linked to grid connections, etc. So there's always more investment is needed across all three of those sorts of areas, because although we are increasing the amount of solar that we're using, we don't really have the infrastructure in place to be able to capitalize on that and use it and share it fairly again across the whole of the UK. So there's more needed, but it's definitely sort of the direction of travel is positive.
I think, and again, that's great to hear. I think the one that strikes me of the three, because I think it was just more in my like a view when I sort of became aware of it, was just how uncompetitive our energy pricing from a commercial perspective is compared to the rest of the Europe and the rest of the world. Like, we are hamstrung, aren't we, in terms of how we go about you. As you said, we've got all these amazing potential areas for us developing in this area, but it just feels like one of those core fundamentals, which is energy, is something that we really need to get our act together on. It's
a huge risk for businesses not to think about this. Like the energy cost, it's all like, oh, it's out of my hands. There's nothing I can do about it, but there really is. You can invest in solar panels or other sort of electrifying your fleet or other ways of like reducing the reliance. It's also not even climate related, but what's been happening in Iran, like we're highly dependent on things that are outside of our control. So the more we can take them into our own control, the more you can mitigate that risk and control and forecast and understand and be in control of what your future holds.
And coming on to how this relates to, because you beautifully started describing kind of the call to arms in the article for the accountancy sector to sort of, I think it actually alluded to like the moral imperative for which, Harry, I want to get your view on this. Like, I think as soon as we start talking about like morality in a commercial context, I get unnerved, if I'm honest. I'm like, that's lovely, but let's get real. So just talk to me through like that conflict, if you like, and perhaps why, from a Hacker Young perspective, looking at the commercial opportunity that's associated with this, like what that looks like.
Yeah, it's completely flipped in the last few years. So when I started really getting into this and pushing it as a service line within UHY, I was like, surely people will just jump on this. This is the right thing to do. It's like important. Like it's so important. The future of our children, it depends on us doing something about this now. And that didn't work. I was expecting it to work, but it didn't. And it's the same across the whole industry. So now we've flipped the language. So we've really flipped what we're talking about, and we're almost like sneaking sustainability into conversations with people and not calling
stealth sustainability.
We can't call it sustainability. It's all about resilience and business risk and strategy and, how we can help you prosper, which is our purpose at UHY. Prosperity is being there in the long term. Like, what are you going to do to make sure you're prospering beyond the sort of traditional 5-year sort of budgeting cycles and strategy cycles? So yeah, there's definitely been a flip, and it's been everywhere, like across marketing, etc. as well. So we're really not talking about sustainability as the good thing to do or the right thing to do. It's like, this is business critical. You've got to think about your climate related risks, but also the climate related opportunities. I think a lot of it is now spinning it in that way as well. Like, yes, there's risk, but with that risk comes an opportunity to mitigate it. And that could actually be a better business decision than just sort of staying as you are.
I just relating to our own work at TrueMark for a moment, that is exactly the proposition. I think I alluded to it before that we started the show. We really don't talk about sustainability communications much anymore at all. What we talk about is trust. That's the opportunity. That's the outcome that you can get to if you go down this route of mitigating the risk associated with greenwashing or green hushing and ultimately doing this properly. So I love the fact that you guys have adopted that at kind of in the way that you approach your clients. Talking about, I want to get specific about like a very typical client engagement, like a typical kind of scenario that you find yourself in, and perhaps just talk us through some of those touch points that lead to an organization sort of seeing the light, if you like, and committing to this, and what role UHY plays in facilitating that.
So a lot at the moment are still regulation driven, so compliance. We're trying to move beyond that into the sort of voluntary side of reporting and understanding. But yeah, a lot at the moment is, so we talk to our clients about it in our planning meetings. We discuss, like, again, we did have sustainability as an agenda point. That's gone now. And it's sort of like looking at risks and then making sure that climate is considered in that risk assessment when you have that initial conversation with a client. And then it depends where they fall into. A lot of people, again, don't necessarily think to ask their accountant to support them with carbon reporting because they don't traditionally see that as the role for their accountant. But what we're able to show them is that actually to do their basic sort of scope 1, scope 2, their direct and purchased emissions, we have all of that data already because we're collecting it to be able to do their accounts. So then being able to show them that we have it and we can measure it for them, then they're starting to think, okay, cool. Like, how else can you support us in this? Like, could you look at doing a carbon reduction plan or a climate action plan, depending on what sector they're in? So it's slowly becoming something that we're discussing more and more with clients. But it's about building that confidence across the firm because there's still a few in the know and the majority don't have the confidence to be having those conversations. It's a bit like imposter syndrome. They don't want to like launch into a conversation about climate related risks without having the full facts, which I completely understand. But it's something that we're really working on at the moment in terms of educating internally.
Well, I want to come back to you on that and touch on that. But I think what's also brilliant relating to kind of the article, you alluded to the fact that the article kind of, again, is that sort of provides that kind of rallying cry for, you know, there's an opportunity for the smaller guys, the SMEs, to get involved in this and to ultimately realize some of the value and the benefit from doing so. But what I often hear from organizations we speak to is that there's always that sense of like, I don't know where to start when it comes to not sustainability, resilience or, you know, ways of becoming more efficient. But what you're describing there is that your accountants are in a perfect position to be able to say, well, look, we can start you on that journey because we've already got the insight that we need in order to kick things off. That's an amazing sort of entry point for you as an accountant. And yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know if there's a question associated with this other than it's just hitting me, just the opportunity there is, if you like, for accountants to play a really key role.
I've got a small fact about SMEs. So SMEs account for 37% of the UK's greenhouse gases, and that's according to the British Business Bank report for 2025 net zero. So a third of the UK's emissions are being generated by small and medium-sized businesses. They often think that their emissions are ineligible, like they're negligible. It doesn't matter. It doesn't contribute. What can their small business do? But the fact that there's so many SMEs and together their sort of combined emissions account for 37%.
That's astonishing. And you just suddenly think, like, what a massive opportunity. Like, and I can see why leaning into this area is good business for you guys, and I can see the opportunity there. Out of interest, I just want to get really technical for a moment. Is it as simple as when looking at accounts, you guys can see the amount of money that's been spent on energy, for example, for that particular business, and you're then to be able to deduce from that what the likely emissions are associated with that energy usage fee? Is that as basic as it gets?
The basic, the easy win or easy quick way of doing it is that spend based analysis. So looking at what they've spent on electricity, gas, motor vehicles, etc.
Sure.
The better data is activity data. So when you're looking at actually the kilowatt hours and etc. So like really digging into detail. But again, a lot of that information is on the invoices that we don't collect yet, but that can be done really quickly and easily with AI tools to sort of scrape that data so that you can look more at the actual activity versus the spend. Because if the spend goes up because there's a war in Iran and we can't get, the fuel, that's actually, you're still using the same amount. But it just looks like you've got higher emissions because you've spent more on it versus the activity side. So there's a move towards activity, but that's step 2. Step 1, let's just look at the basics, the easy information, what we have, the spend-based data, and then go from there.
Well, I'm going to say I actually do think it's really exciting, the idea of getting, the carbon literacy side, the educational side, the awareness side for the profession kind of up to speed, because as we've spoken about during this conversation, like the implications of getting this right are that there's a massive amount of organizations out there that we could onboard onto a sustainability journey through the mechanism of the accountancy experiences they have. So I think it's fantastic. What, from your perspective, when you think about UHY and you think about how, if this is done well and done right, what does the next 5 years look like? What are the kind of goals and objectives that you've set yourself when it comes to sustainability with your clients? Like, what do you want to do?
So one of the key things I'm looking at the moment with our accounts team is for it to become standard that they calculate their scope 1 and 2 emissions for their clients as part of the management accounts process. So clients start to see sort of their baseline measurement, and then over time, like if they are implementing things, and then they start asking questions about how they can be more sustainable or not, or just have a better business strategy if they're not going to talk about sustainability. But it's really embedding that as part of our core business practices. And then as part of our audit services, obviously we have to look at, climate related risks and opportunities for our clients. But again, making it just standard practice and embedding it into what we do, and then supporting our clients. I'm hoping that will then lead to us supporting them with carbon reduction plans and like what in their transition plan, like what are they going to do from now to get to their sort of target. What is their target? How we can help them set it. Like, it's just, if we had all SME businesses beginning that journey now, imagine what a difference it could make by 2030. So yeah.
Well, here, and as we sit here in 2026, let's hope that we've got some, might come back and do a how have things gone, and the impact they've been had. Harriet, that was absolutely brilliant. Like, I feel like I've held on to your coattails a little bit when it comes to all things, accountancy and financial reporting, but really, really interesting stuff. And, we did a pretty good job of not mentioning sustainability too much throughout the conversation. So thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it.
And that's all for today's episode of The Responsible Edge. A big, big thank you to Harriet Hodgson Grove for joining me on today's show. As a reminder, this episode was brought to you by TrueMark, the mark of trusted sustainability reports and communications. Visit truemark.com to learn more. I'm Charlie Martin. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. See you next time.